Today on the Transplant Helper, I'm going to be answering the most common question I've received, period, in about the last 2 to 2.5 years here on the channel, and it concerns whether or not I have chosen to get the COVID-19 vaccines and or its boosters. Stay tuned.
Hit the subscribe button and the bell notification to become part of the Transplant Helper community.
Hey folks, welcome back to the Transplant Helper again today. My name is Jim Merle, and yes, this question is one I have been extremely hesitant about answering publicly here on the channel, albeit every time I've been asked this question by anyone personally who's either called, sent a message, what have you, maybe an email, I have answered it as clearly and precisely as I can, and I've tried to answer it as honestly as I can, albeit I'll admit my opinions and my views have kind of adapted/adopted over time. So with that being said, the question is always, Jim, have you gotten the COVID-19 vaccine and or its boosters? And do you recommend that to other people? So as I begin this again with hesitation, let me tell you a few things about my decision to get the vaccine or not. And first of all, it comes down to the fact that my personal decision is not a political decision, okay? Do not misunderstand me. My decision to get the vaccine or not is not a political decision, albeit I do vote and I do participate in politics from that perspective. In general, I never, ever watch any form of national news with the exception of an occasional YouTube video. I just don't get into that. It doesn't interest me at all. So you'll never find me sitting on the couch watching the 6 o'clock evening news or anything like that. I just don't do it. I'm not a guy that is that concerned about that. I'm more of a guy who's very local. I'm more dependent on what's going on around me, what I can visually see, what I can feel, and I'm not that concerned about what's going on nationally. You can take it or leave it, but I promise you this, I am not a politician by any means, and I really just don't take sides. I really just don't care about that. So my decision to get the vaccine or not is not based on politics, which I understand is a huge reason why people might make a choice one way or the other. In the second place, my decision to get the vaccine or not is not based on position. And what I mean by that is I'm not going to decide to do that just because or simply because I am a transplant recipient. Now, I do understand the majority of transplant recipients, because we're immunosuppressed and because in general we're very concerned about catching any type of cold, flu, virus, whatever, which would obviously include COVID and all of its variants, we need to be extremely cautious about what we are vaccinated for and against to be sure that we have maximized our protection if that is at all possible. So in general, I would say yes. As someone that is a transplant recipient / immunosuppressed, I would probably in general say yes. Go out and get any vaccine possible, get any treatment, get anything you can have to assist you in that. But for me, my decision to do that or not is not positional. I'm not making my decision just basically and simply based on the fact that I am a heart transplant recipient. So mine is not positional. In the third place, mine is not a public decision. And this is what I've tried to emphasize every time I've answered the question privately, is to make sure that people understand this is not a public decision. I am not trying to do what I would suggest for me. I'm not trying to push that on anybody else. So whether or not you choose to get a vaccine or not, in one sense, that is none of my business, albeit a lot that have reached out to me. I've in turn asked the question of them, have you been vaccinated? Are you deciding to vaccinate? You know, whatever. But it's not a public decision. What is good for me is not good for everybody else, or what is bad for me in that case is not bad for everybody else. So it really irks me when I see people becoming so divided over this question because they assume that just because one person did it, that in their mind or their heart, that they want everyone else to do exactly the same thing, because I don't believe that at all. And it's not a public decision. However, for me, choosing to be vaccinated or not is a very personal decision. I think everyone should be sitting down, deciding based on their facts, based on their current situation, based on, in many cases, like I'm going to mention, based on their past. They've got to determine that if getting these vaccines and or its boosters have the real benefit that needs to be there that outweighs the risk, okay? And so it comes down to this, for me personally, to answer the question clearly, no. I have not been vaccinated for COVID-19. Not any of the vaccines, not all of the vaccines. I have not been vaccinated. And that has always come down to my personal choice, not only what I feel, but what I have examined, what I have, determined from reading all the literature and such. And it mainly comes down to something that happened in my past, something that really kind of turned my life around. If I had to guess, I think, I didn't look at my medical record, maybe I should. This happened approximately in 2007 or 8-ish, okay? And I'll look that up. Maybe I'll pop it up on the screen. But back in 2007 or 8-ish, I actually dealt with a form of heart problem, if you want to call it that, called myocarditis. Now, if you're not familiar with myocarditis, it is basically an inflammation of the heart muscle itself. Okay, now there are many different forms that are existent. There's myocarditis, there's pericarditis, there's endocarditis. All these are basically just other words to describe the infection that either exists inside, outside, or even in the sac around the heart. And basically back in 2007/8-ish, I experienced a very severe case of myocarditis. Now, I've also experienced pericarditis, and that's no fun, but myocarditis was kind of my kryptonite back then. And this is right on the heels of me growing up as a congenital heart patient, so being at risk for, for anything heart related because of my congenital condition, and really just going through life with just having those small problems, whatever. But in 2007/8-ish, I had myocarditis, and it put me in the dirt. That is the very first time in my life, even growing up as a heart patient, that's the first time in my life I've ever had to travel by ambulance. It's the first time in my life I've ever had any heart issues. And it was the first time in my life that, I'll be honest with you, with the exception of eternity and God ahead in heaven, I was scared to death, okay? That is the moment when I realized how frail, how unpredictable life can be. And I also learned how painful and how agonizing myocarditis can be. As a matter of fact, I just basically all at once began to have severe chest pains, assumed, like anyone would, I was having a heart attack, was dealing with a lot of things, and immediately was taken to the emergency room, intern sent directly from Mississippi, the Mississippi emergency room, over to UAB Hospital, diagnosed with myocarditis. And basically, and I'll give you the exact line that my pediatric cardiologist said. He came in the room. He said, "Jim, you got myocarditis." I said, "What does that mean?" He explained to me what the condition was about the inflammation. I said, "What's the outcome?" He said, "Basically, you're either going to be in the hospital for 2 weeks receiving 24/7 antibiotics and other drugs to try to prevent this from completely destroying your heart, or you're going to die." And it was that last phrase, "or you're going to die," that caught my attention. And so you fast forward to now, and the main issue that you're finding connected, and you can read all your literature, and I get that you can watch one video or you can read one article or watch one news story and you can get a different opinion, but the one thing that people continue to come back to that is related to the vaccine, that does occur inside of getting the vaccination, particularly for whatever reason, the second one of the booster, is that there are people between 18 and 25 who are experiencing sudden onset myocarditis. And so because of that, me knowing that in the back of my mind, having talked with my team about it and discussed this, not just with my team, but with a number of cardiologists that I'm personal friends with, basically all around the globe, the conclusion has come that, Jim, you are at high risk for myocarditis. A repeat case of myocarditis or any of its cousins like pericarditis, endocarditis, whatever, will potentially and probably be deadly to you. And so for me, it is not worth the risk. There, I said it. I've not been vaccinated. I've not gotten any of the vaccinations or all, and I don't plan on being vaccinated at this point. It's my decision. It's not political. It's not positional. It's not a public or blanket decision that ought to be applied to everyone or anyone. It's absolutely personal. So what is the takeaway here? I know that I'm going to have people watching this video that have clicked on it immediately, hoping that I would promote the vaccination and encourage everyone to get it. On the other side, I probably got a few people that already know a little bit about my case and think to themselves, well, I'll click on the video because Jim will talk everybody out of getting the vaccination. He'll tell them what to do. He'll tell them to avoid it. Not doing either one of those. I'm really not. What I am encouraging you to do, however, is to make the choice that is right for you. And I'm not encouraging you to base that choice on feelings, but only facts. I'm encouraging you to make that choice based on sitting down with your team and having a discussion with them about these vaccines and about the virus itself and its risk, which, by the way, I have had COVID-19, supposedly on 2 occasions. One of them I'm sure I had it. The second one I'm not so sure. But sit down and talk with your team about that. And when they come with a line of, well, you're a transplant recipient, you're immunosuppressed, so yes, get the vaccine, take that, okay? Accept that. If they're saying that based on your personal history. If they're saying that based on a real emphasis having been put on your records, your past, your previous experiences, if they're saying that based on that, take it and do it. Do what they say. Be compliant. Don't be non-compliant. Don't be a person who down the road, needs another transplant and they can shake their finger at you and say, well, you didn't get your vaccine or you didn't cooperate or you didn't take your medication. Don't be that guy. Do not be that person. But only make a decision based on, with them, with your team, together with them, not based again on feelings, but on facts. What do the facts say? Is the vaccine, does it put you more at risk for any condition that you may be predisposed to, like for me, myocarditis? Does the virus put you predisposed for any condition that you might have had in the past? For me, could be, I guess, anything, but you've got to weigh that out. Make it a personal decision. So what I'm saying toward the end of this, make it a personal decision. Sit down with your team. Make sure they're being personal with this. Make sure they're being specific. Make sure they're giving you information based on your case with your file laying open there on the table or pulled up on a computer screen. Make sure you do what's right for you. And then when you do what's right for you, don't worry about what anyone else thinks or what anyone else believes or what anyone else says. You make a decision that's right for you. And if you're on the side of being vaccinated, I know most of you already, if you're a transplant recipient, immunosuppressed, most of you have been vaccinated. Some of you 2 times, 3 times, I think even maybe now possible 4 times. More power to you. And I pray that you've not had any issue. I assume that you haven't. But make a choice that is right for you. Now, I invite your comments below this video, just like I always do. This is a place where I come here to speak, what I know, what I've experienced, what I understand, and I expect you to do the same, but I expect you to be respectful when you do and understand that any decision that any of us made had needed to be personal, and I hope it had been personal to the point that it was specific to our situation. Thank you so much for joining me today. I look forward to the next video, and until next time, stay stronger, friends.